tolerable Monday, as most of you I know are back on the grind today. Appreciate you tuning in. I've got 5 or 6, maybe even 7 videos for you today, so make sure you click that subscribe button down below. Over the weekend, Twitter was wild. You had Joe Rogan get absolutely having enough of a particular doctor, Elon Musk getting in on the conversation, Dr. Mark Cuban, pharmaceutical salesman Mark Cuban weighing in on everything, and I'm here to break it all down, how it started, how it's going now, and the ongoing cope and seethe on Twitter. Right now, there are a lot of people with very bad ideas tweeting various versions of Debate Me Bros bad. Now, traditionally, Debate Me Bros are leftist weirdos on YouTube, and yes, they are bad. However, in this particular case, you have a bunch of kind of cultists having meltdowns about having to defend their worship of the jab. Now, I'm going to say this again. I've always been very, very clear, but given this topic's divisiveness, I want to remind people I am not a doctor, and I have zero opinion about whether or not you got it. It's none of my business. I assume you made the best choice for you. Okay. That's just the facts of it. I never, had a problem with people doing this. I had a problem with, forcing it on people or, mandatory stuff. That's where my opinion, like, just to remind people. Now, it started with Professor Peter Hotez trying to get Joe Rogan deplatformed and having it basically backfire spectacularly. Joe Rogan had RFK on his podcast, and RFK has a lot of opinions about the jab. Opinions that people on the left and the right both agree with and disagree with. He's an interesting figure because he brings in a lot of people on the right that agree with him on a lot of things, even though he's a Democrat. And so Joe Rogan has him on. They talk about various studies and various things about the poke, which, again, I'm not a doctor. I suggest you just watch the episode and, make up your own mind. But he tweets that Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to stem Joe Rogan's poke misinformation. It's really true that Anna Merlan is just awful. And from all of the online attacks I'm receiving after this absurd podcast, it's clear that many actually believe this nonsense. Now, of course, this article was on Vice, so it was read by about 7 people. And Elon Musk getting in on everything. But before that, Joe Rogan, obviously not too happy with this guy trying to get him deplatformed, trying to, use the media to get him deplatformed, just unloaded on Saturday on Twitter. And I want to go back to the very beginning of it because this is where it started. By the way, you know how everyone's always asking for, I just want to let everyone know, today we opened up our pre-order for our number 1 flavor is blueberry cobbler, and we got a K-Cup machine going, and now we are selling our number 1 flavor as a K-Cup. It's been the number 1 ask for people. And if the blueberry cobbler sells well, I'll make, by the end of, the summer, I'll make sure I have all of our top flavors available in K-Cups. We already have our medium and dark roast available, but I'll leave a link in the description. You can pre-order that. It's going to ship the first week in July. So promo code The Quartering will save you some money too. Now, Joe Rogan basically puts out, there's a lot of interesting conversation happening around RFK's opinion on the Joe Rogan podcast. Then, of course, old Dr. Deplatforming had, a Vice write an article, wrote an article for Vice so he could try to whine and complain. So on Saturday, Joe Rogan logged on Twitter and has had enough, saying, in regards to the Vice article, Peter, if you claim what RFK Jr. is saying is misinformation, I am offering you $100,000 to the charity of your choice if you're willing to debate him on my show with no time limit. Now, this is, after much back and forth, an offer that the doctor had just outright refused. Even as that number swelled to over $600,000 in charitable donations, plus Coffee Brand Coffee threw in a single bag of coffee. I thought that would have tipped the scales. But so essentially going back and forth, people adding more and more money or more and more money. Peter Hotez puts this tweet out, then deletes it, saying, "Be serious, Joe. That's what you throw out for your hunting buddies on a weekend. A $50 million endowment, which you, Spotify, and RFK Jr. can easily afford. Not for me, but so we can continue making low-cost, patent-free poke stuff for the world's poor," preceded by a public apology. He immediately gets ratioed by this and deletes the tweet. Joe Rogan says, "By the way, Peter, I saw that tweet you deleted." So then he continues to dodge. "Joe," he says to the doctor, "you have my cell, my email. I'm always willing to speak with you." He's been on Rogan's show before. He said, "This is not an answer. I challenge you publicly because you publicly quote tweeted and agreed with that dog poo advice article. If you're really serious about what you want to stand for, you have a massive opportunity for a debate that will reach the largest audience a discussion like this has ever had. If you think someone else is better qualified, please suggest that person." All these tweets getting 150 to 250,000 likes. So then he replies. Again, they're just quote tweet battling. Joe's just smashing him. "Joe, if you're serious about addressing the poke and the fact that 200,000 unpoked Americans needlessly perished during the coup," yeah, how many people? Okay, I'm not even going to contextualize, or I'm just going to read you the news here, "including 40,000 in our state of Texas, blah, blah, blah." Again, Joe Rogan says, "Again, I'm going to ask you very clearly, are you willing to debate Robert Kennedy Jr. on my podcast?" So he is not, he just outright, out and out refuses to back up his opinions. Now, what the left is saying today is, well, he's never going to convince any of these anti-pokers. And that's probably true. But who he will perhaps convince, if he has, a good argument, is people in the middle. That's the thing. People often back out of debates and things like that because the issue is, done and dusted on their side and the opposition side. But what a lot of people forget is that there's a lot of reasonable people in the middle who don't have their minds made up that you can convince. But instead, Peter Hotez writes, "I'm concerned about the Elon Tucker link," and then fold in Rogan and RFK Jr., and it becomes a pretty formidable coalition of neo-fascist leanings. So, of course, Joe Rogan has the receipt saying, "Are you sure I'm not a part of a coalition with neo-fascist leanings? Seems like that's what you really think or what you're projecting to the masses." So this is after Professor Hotez keeps saying, "Oh, I'll come on your show. I'll come on your show, but I'm not going to debate my opinions." Now, I will agree that somebody who is very good at the debate is a skill. It absolutely is. And somebody who's very good can defeat somebody, in the court of public opinion, even if they're wrong. There's a lot of people out there who are very good at it, and they can argue from positions of just complete incorrectness, but because they're so good at it, they can trip people up. Now, I don't think RFK is particularly a well-known master debater, but that is a point. Then Mark Cuban sticks his pharmaceutical face in here, saying, and by the way, he did do very well. He got 170,000 likes, quote tweeting Joe Rogan simply to shill his own drug company. "Way to talk in generalities, Joe. Not saying there aren't a lot of effed up things about pharma. That's why we created mypharmacompany.com. But to ignore this blah, 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 you aren't going to find the ground truth on the poke if you were to bring someone on who's focused on debating the issue, like this person, trying to bully Dr. Hotez." I've been bringing Huck to work with me. So anyway, the left is now whining about this doctor getting bullied. And by the way, let me remind you, I don't need to remind my beautiful, intelligent viewers, but let me remind the left. These are the exact same people that bullied people who didn't want to get the jab into getting it, forced it on employees. Mark Cuban, I'm sure, forced it on his NBA players, on his Dallas Mavericks team that he owns. It's funny how everyone's so concerned about bullying now. When these are the same people that wanted lockdowns, they wanted people to go to jail for not getting the poke. They wanted you to be ostracized from your families. All of this nonsense, right? And then Patrick Bet David replies, Joe is trying to bully the doctor. Interesting. Let me address these issues with your tweet. 1, bullying. Millions of Americans from all walks of life were bullied into taking it. Some forced, many coerced. Many threatened to lose their jobs. Thousands of businesses went bankrupt. Families were divided. Late night hosts were doing skits dressed as syringes. Mayors of New York City offering free French fries if you took it. NIH director flip-flopping on masks. MSM calling anyone who questioned it conspiracy theorists. Are you really calling Joe Rogan a bully? Capitalism. What makes capitalism work? Freedom to buy and sell. He goes through all of that. And then he goes, debate. I've watched you closely over the years. You're great at debating. He's talking about Mark Cuban. So great that you could argue both sides of any issue. I think you ought to make a run for the 2024 presidential election. You have some very good points. I digress. And he goes on to say, the idea is like comparing Elon Musk, by the way, and Joe Rogan to mainstream media. That's a bit of a stretch, but I have an idea why you would say that. Before October last year, these type of conversations were not even possible on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Only in private settings. Many content creators were silenced if they interviewed people with opposing views on the COOF. Our Robert Kennedy Jr. interview was taken down on YouTube 2 years ago. Content creators were walking on eggshells, being afraid of being platformed. Musk isn't silencing anyone who argues for the poke. He's actually creating a climate to have debate. Just this week, MSNBC and CNN both said they wouldn't air Trump's speech because they already knew in advance that all he'd tell is lies. As if JB is the only one, Joe Biden, that tells the truth. He also writes, thank God for Twitter, Spotify, and Rumble. Shout out Rumble and other platforms who allow for this discussion to happen. And I think that cost plus drugs. As a marketer, I respect your strategy of getting this into the thread to promote your business. A lesson for small business owners. The whole thing has completely backfired. The media is having a complete meltdown. Elon Musk and Joe Rogan challenge poke scientists to debate. Anti-poker Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And again, why Peter Hotez says he won't debate RFK Jr. after the weekend. Why won't he? Because, he doesn't believe that this is a guy that believes in the science TM, probably, right? Like, that means you cannot question it. This is the very same policies that we've seen on YouTube, Twitter 1.0, Facebook, Instagram, all these places. You could not discuss this thing. Now there are more options. Twitter, you can openly discuss it. YouTube has relaxed many of their restrictions. Rumble, by the way, also wide open to discuss these things. So, the idea that these guys are all crying and whining and complaining about, Joe Rogan. Look at The Verge. Spotify does nothing as Joe Rogan peddles misinformation. It's like these people, the journalists think that the only people you should be getting your information from is them. I'm not saying Joe Rogan's right about everything. He's asking a lot of the same questions that many other people do. That's why he's so popular. This is going to be an interesting week for the poke discussion. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you pre-order your Blueberry Cobbler K-Cups. The 72-pack is the better value. I'm trying to work on pricing to make it more affordable. Once we do more volume, I can do that. Promo code The Quartering will at least save you some cash. We obviously have other K-Cups too. We have our medium and our dark roast available. Those are not on pre-order. So if you're a K-Cup person and you want to try out Coffee Brand Coffee, pick up, a couple. And if they sell well, then I'll open up all my other flavors. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you leave a like on it. We'll talk to you again real soon.